How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Diablo 4 video. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for Diablo 4, and that is something I find kind of fun to do, and that is make some tier lists about each of the class and how they perform and how well I think they're going to perform overall during launch and beyond. Now, obviously this is going to be purely for fun. I'm going to explain obviously the reason why I think they are, and this is going to be my serious thought. But I always find it fun to go back and look at what my perception of a class or anything in a game was before, like really putting a lot of effort and time into investing into the game, and then how I feel after the fact, which I will do an updated tier list. It's easy content, I know, but at the end of the day, I still find it kind of fun. But yeah, hopefully none of you get too mad because this is just a tier list, in my opinion. You know, it could be completely wrong, which I don't think it is. But anyway, let's dive on into the tier list. But before we begin, don't forget to like as well as subscribe to the channel for more Diablo 4 content. And yeah, let's get into this tier list. Alright, we're on the tier list section of the video. So let's start off. I'm going to go from left to right and just explain my reasoning for putting them there. And first off, we have the Rogue. So the Rogue is a very interesting class. And starting off for me, the Rogue is a solid S tier. Here's why. So first off, the class is, in my opinion, from my experience, has been consistently good through the entirety of its playtime. Early on, its skills feel really good. It's fast, very dexterous playstyle. It's versatile as it can do range and it can do melee. And a lot of their skills actually make sense to the class, making them strong. I also see the class didn't really need much balance compared to other classes. And I think they feel really good. I've seen it do really good single target. I've seen it do really good AoE. I've seen it beat bosses by itself across multiple builds, and I think overall the damage is really good. The build diversity is really nice, and overall I can't really see a negative with the class. And I do think it's underrated compared to other classes. But for me, I think Rogue is an S tier pick overall. Alright, next is the Necromancer. And the Necromancer for me is going to be a fan favorite class. I think it's very strong. I think it's powerful. I think it does a lot of things well, and it is pretty versatile. But for me, I think it's A tier class. Here's why. So first off, the class feels really good early. I think it's very easy to use throughout the entirety of the game. I know the minions had a little bit of hard time in the server slam, but that's just Blizzard's balancing. I'm sure they're gonna get it right. The class feels very, very powerful. Early on, very easy playstyle. You can rub your face across the keyboard and kill everything with the class. Mid game, I imagine it's going to be pretty strong because it did scale fairly well when I was playing it. And I think the end game, I think it's going to be good. But the reason why I don't put it S tier is because I don't know how good it's going to be against bosses in its clear speed. I've seen the class struggle sometimes with single target compared to like the Rogue, for example. Also, the minions aren't really that smart. And I think that's going to hinder it from being a S tier class, in my opinion, because there's a lot of times they do stand in dangerous locations. I know the class has other builds that are good. There's like a very good shadow build that no one touches at all that I'm not going to mention. But there's the Necromancer's main draw is going to be its minions, right? So for most classes, for most players playing the class, I think the minions are good, but I don't think they're S tier good, mainly because of the AI. I'm not sure how well the minions are going to scale into late game. I find minions in general in like this genre tend to struggle super late compared to other classes. I think it's going to do fine, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's an S tier. So that's my reasons for it, but we'll see. Next, we're going to be talking about the Sorceress. And for me, I think this class is a high A, low S. I'm not sure where I would put them just yet, but I'm putting them high A to be safe. But the class is fantastic. Early game, really strong, really powerful. And keep in mind, I play all classes. So when I say really strong, really powerful, I'm talking about relative to all classes. It may not feel as overpowered as it once was, so you may perceive it as worse. But compared to other classes, even in its server slam state, is so much better than a lot of these other classes on their start. And so they're a solid A tier for me. I feel like the class has a lot of good like core skills that work well. And for example, I looked over the core skills of the Sorceress, and a lot of her skills, or a lot of their skills, was basically you can meet a condition that you can influence to get done, like have X amount of mana to get a benefit. Like when you compare this to like the Druid, for example, like his pulverize skill, it is forced to wait 12 seconds before it can get a benefit from like his skills. So a lot of times the Sorceress can just straight up interpret what she wants to do to get the benefit of their skills, which is really nice. You can actually like change that. Also, the class feels powerful as its range. No one really is going to hit it unless you're just playing bad. The skills are very versatile, and a lot of their effects, to me, their legendary effects, have really good control and really good damage on them compared to other classes. So for me, Sorceress is a solid A tier, and I think it's going to even do really well against bosses. Probably not as good as the Rogue, but I do think it's still a really decent boss killer. On to the Barbarian, and this one is the one I played the most, and maybe I have a better grasp and understanding of the class. But for me, the Barb is a low A, high B to me. I probably lean towards high B, if I'm being honest. For me, here's why. So first off, I know a lot of you are going to say, well, in the end game, allegedly, it's supposed to be the best class. Like, obviously, I don't believe anything until I see it myself, because Timmy Two Thumbs could be giving you information from the beta, from the testing. So I don't really care what Timmy Two Thumbs have to say about the Barbarian. What I care about is whenever the best players in the world who actually played the game and taken the build to higher heights, do I care if the Barbarian is late game good. Until then, that's yet to be seen. Also, one thing to take into account is like Diablo 4 isn't going to just be the end game. There's a early game, there's a mid game, and there's an end game that leads up to that. And for me, by far one of the worst, well, maybe Druid is worse, but the Barbarian has a very, very, very terrible start, and it feels very horrible to play the Barbarian early game. You're constantly resource hungry. I think his damage is mediocre. He's always in danger to deal damage, and I think he's, while very strong, I don't think he has the same level of versatility as all these other classes. He's kind of a one-dimensional playstyle. Jump in, use your skills, time it around burst windows, and kind of move on until you get legendaries. It's kind of the same playstyle, but I think he's good. Maybe he does have, with that said, he does have a lot more legendary aspect slots, which will increase his power and make him a powerhouse in the late game. But again, this isn't just a late game. There's a whole other thing, a whole section that leads up to the late game. So I look at the class as a whole, not just what it can do in the end game. And as a whole, I feel the class is a solid B tier. Finally, let's talk about the Druid. And the Druid's a question mark for me, because honestly, when I look at the end game of all these classes, this one is a massive question mark because of a few reasons. And before we talk about those reasons, I'm putting him as a C. Here's why. First off, the class to me seems like good at a lot of things, but master at none of these things. He can do melee like the Barb, but I don't think he's going to do as good as the Barb. He can do summons like the Necromancer. I don't think his summons are going to be as good as Necromancer, especially considering they're getting 300% damage buffs on their actives. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with playing him as Summoner right now. He does magic, but do you think he's going to do more magic or better magic than Sorceress? Probably not. And for me, I think a well-balanced class is never going to be as good as a class that specializes at doing something good. Also, you have to take into account, I don't think his skills, in my opinion, synergize as well as other classes. So, like I said earlier for the Rogue has good versatility because they can do range and they can do melee, right? But regardless of if you're playing range or melee, you're going to want those enhancement skills. You're going to want some of the defensive skills. You're going to find value in a lot of the skills on the tree that can easily work and interchange. For me, when I see the Druid, I do feel like a massive portion of his skills just don't work well together. And I think that's going to be a problem, because I feel like the dev team will have to build the character in multiple ways, vastly different from one another to make it feel good. So for example, with the Barb, like, you're going to build all his aspects to be very good at maybe being resource effective, doing good melee damage, stuff like that, right? Same with the sorcerer. You're gonna have them elemental focus, you know, built around those different elements, but do really well. With the druid, you gotta build a stormcaster that's fair and balanced. Build a summoner that's fair and balanced. Build a melee character that can be good at doing shapeshifting stuff. I don't know if I feel that the class is gonna be well at doing anything, and I think that's why I'm putting it at the AC tier for now, until we see how the class perform late game. Alright, and that is it for this. I know some of you are going to be mad at me for putting some classes in different lower tiers. I'm very firm with my belief on the Barbarian. I don't think an in-game should be the measure of how good a class performs. And yeah, I think this is going to be a very solid tier list. But let me know down in the comments what you think. Is this a tier list you can agree with? Don't forget to like as well as subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Later.